Let me tell you something that most people never realize until it's too late. Your feelings are the most unreliable advisors you will ever have. They whisper to you at the worst possible moments. They convince you to stay in bed when opportunity is waking up. They tell you to rest when pressure is about to make you stronger. They convince you that you deserve comfort when life is testing your hunger. And if you listen to them long enough, they will turn you into a version of yourself that you won't even respect every single day. Your feelings wake up before you do. They wake up ready to negotiate, ready to bargain, ready to pull you back into the weakest version of yourself. They wake up saying you're tired, you're stressed, you're overwhelmed, you're not ready, you don't feel like it today. And people spend their entire lives obeying those signals as if feelings were facts. But feelings aren't facts, they're impulses. They're noise. They're the byproduct of a weak chemical reaction inside your body telling you to stay small. And people call that intuition. They call it being honest with themselves. No, it's being controlled. It's being ruled. It's being owned by the weakest part of you. Winners understand something different. They understand that feelings are temporary, but results are permanent. They understand that discipline isn't about doing things when you feel good. It's about doing things precisely when you don't feel good. When your feelings tell you to stop, that's when discipline tells you to begin. When your mind tells you it's too hard, discipline reminds you that the hard things are exactly what shape you. When your emotions throw excuses at you, discipline throws consequences back. That's why the disciplined win. Not because they're smarter or stronger or more talented, but because they refuse to let temporary emotions sabotage their permanent goals. Think about how many times your feelings have lied to you. Think about the days you told yourself you'd start tomorrow, and tomorrow never came. Think about how many opportunities you've lost because you didn't feel ready. Think about how many times you convinced yourself you needed rest when what you really needed was action. Feelings don't care about your future. They only care about your comfort. They don't care about your goals. They only care about what's easy in the moment. They don't care about the life you want. They only care about the life you already have. And as long as you obey them, nothing changes. The moment you stop listening to feelings and start listening to discipline, your entire identity shifts. Your mornings shift. Your habits shift. Your self-respect shifts. You start moving with purpose instead of emotion. You start doing things you used to avoid. You start becoming the person you've always wanted to be, not because it feels good, but because it's necessary. That's the difference between people who stay average and people who rise. One group waits to feel motivated. The other group moves without it. One group waits for the perfect moment. The other group creates it. One group is controlled by emotions. The other group controls them. Most people never rise because they're slaves to how they feel. They say they want success but obey laziness. They say they want discipline but follow cravings. They say they want transformation but listen to excuses. And then they wonder why nothing changes. They're letting the weakest voice inside them run their life. They're letting the most temporary part of themselves dictate their long-term destiny. That's not self-care. That's self-destruction disguised as comfort. Real growth begins the moment you stop caring about how you feel. Real progress begins the moment you act without permission from your emotions. Real strength begins the moment you override that voice inside that says, "Not today." Because every time you act despite your feelings, you weaken them. And every time you obey discipline, you strengthen it. And eventually, discipline becomes your default. You become someone who doesn't negotiate with laziness, someone who doesn't depend on motivation, someone who doesn't crumble under pressure, someone who moves forward regardless of fatigue, stress, doubt, or fear. That's how champions are built. That's how winners are created. That's how a life transforms from average to exceptional. Not by listening to feelings, but by mastering them. Not by waiting for the right moment, but by creating it through force of will. And the truth is simple. The more you ignore your feelings, the stronger you become. The more you obey discipline, the more unstoppable you get. Because the moment feelings stop controlling your actions, your future starts taking shape in your hands. Look around you for a moment, and you'll notice a pattern that repeats itself across every industry, every generation, every success story you've ever admired. The people at the top aren't the ones who woke up feeling great every morning. They aren't the ones who relied on a magical dose of motivation to get things done. They aren't the ones who let emotions dictate their actions. They're the ones who showed up when it was painful, when it was boring, when it was exhausting, when everything inside of them screamed to walk away. This world has always rewarded those who can control themselves more than those who seek to be comfortable. It doesn't matter what year it is, what system you live in, what environment you come from. The consistent always rise and the emotional always fall. Success is not built on feelings. It is built on repetition. It's built on a pattern of decisions that don't care about your mood. It's built on the mornings when you wake up tired but still move. It's built on the nights when you want to relax but you choose to work. The world gives opportunities to the people it can rely on, not the people who crumble because the day didn't feel right. Employers trust the disciplined, partners trust the disciplined, clients trust the disciplined, and life itself rewards the disciplined. Emotionally driven people burn bright for a moment, then disappear. Disciplined people burn steady, unshakable, and they last. The truth is, society has no sympathy for emotions when it comes to results. You can cry, you can complain, you can rant about how hard it is, but none of that moves you forward. None of that earns respect. None of that builds power. The world is brutal in that way, and Tate says it often. Nobody cares how you feel. They care what you produce. They care about what you deliver, what you finish, what you execute. Life is not shaped by your emotional waves, but by the actions you take while those waves are hitting you. That's why disciplined people outperform emotional people every single time. They don't wait for the waves to settle. They learn to surf them. Most people want success with the emotional tolerance of a child. They want results without discomfort. They want achievement without sacrifice. They want to feel good every step of the journey, and the moment that feeling fades, their effort collapses. They're the type who go to the gym for 2 days and quit because they don't feel the spark. They're the type who start a project, hit the first obstacle, and suddenly lose passion. They're the type who say they want greatness but can't handle the slightest inconvenience. Meanwhile, someone else with half their talent keeps grinding, keeps applying pressure, keeps executing. That person becomes the winner not because they're better, but because they're consistent. Imagine two people with the same goal. One acts when he feels like it. The other acts regardless. Who will win after 1 month, 6 months, 1 year, 10 years? The emotional person will have dozens of restarts, countless excuses, and a long list of attempts. The disciplined person will have results, experience, confidence, and momentum. That gap becomes enormous over time. It becomes so wide that catching up becomes impossible. That's why the world doesn't reward the best. It rewards the most disciplined. It rewards the ones who show up every single time without asking themselves if they feel inspired. Today, there's something powerful that happens when people stop operating from emotion and start operating from commitment. Their self-image changes. Their environment changes. Their opportunities change. People begin to trust them. They begin to trust themselves. They no longer make promises they can't keep. They no longer talk about dreams they never act on. They become the kind of person whose presence alone demands respect. Not because they shout, not because they brag, but because they live in a way that proves reliability. And if you want proof, look at anyone who has built something meaningful. Athletes pushing through pain when their emotions tell them to quit. Entrepreneurs showing up every day even when revenue is low. Artists creating even when inspiration is gone. Soldiers training under pressure when fear is screaming at them. None of these people waited for emotions to align. They didn't chase feelings, they chased standards, and the world rewarded them for that. So the question becomes simple. Do you want your life controlled by your emotional impulses, or do you want your life shaped by disciplined action that builds power, respect, and long-term success? Because in the real world, feelings don't pay bills, feelings don't build legacy, feelings don't create greatness. Discipline does. And once you understand that the world respects discipline far more than emotional comfort, you stop chasing moods and start chasing mastery. There's a truth about success that most people run from, a truth they avoid because it sounds uncomfortable, heavy, unfair. But it's the truth that separates the great from the average, the strong from the fragile, the disciplined from the emotional. The truth is this: you cannot grow without pain. You cannot rise without hardship. You cannot build strength without struggle. Every version of yourself that you admire, every future you dream of living, every victory you imagine achieving, none of it comes without a price. And that price is discomfort. That price is sacrifice. That price is suffering you don't want but absolutely need. The world is not designed to reward the comfortable. Comfort creates softness. Comfort makes you predictable. Comfort lowers your hunger. Comfort makes you accept less than what you're capable of. The moment your life becomes too easy, you start losing the edge that keeps you moving forward. People say they want greatness, but they're allergic to the very process that creates it. They want strength without lifting heavy. They want confidence without facing fear. They want success without failure. They want wisdom without mistakes. They want results without pressure. But pressure is the sculptor. Pain is the teacher. Struggle is the forge where the weak are melted down and the strong are reforged into something unstoppable. Think back to every moment in your life that changed you for the better. It wasn't the easy days. It wasn't the days when everything clicked. It wasn't the moments when you were comfortable. It was the moments when your back was against the wall, when you were forced to grow, when you had no choice but to push past the limit you thought was fixed. The nights you couldn't sleep because of stress. The mornings you wanted to quit but didn't. The days when failure embarrassed you so deeply that you had to rebuild yourself from scratch. That's where growth lived. Not in comfort, never in comfort, but in difficulty. And here's the part people don't want to hear: struggle is not optional. It's required. If you avoid it, you stay average. If you embrace it, you ascend. Hardship isn't something that happens to unlucky people. It's something that happens to everyone. And the difference between winning and losing lies in what you do with it. Some people use pain as an excuse to stop, and others use it as fuel to go harder. Some people let hardship break them, and others let hardship sharpen them. Some people run from struggle, and others charge into it because they know greatness lies on the other side. If you study anyone successful, anyone powerful, anyone respected, you will always find chapters of struggle behind their achievements. Not minor discomfort, but real pain. They've been betrayed, rejected, doubted, exhausted, stressed, pushed to their limits more times than you can imagine. They didn't escape hardship, they survived it. They didn't avoid pain, they endured it. They didn't eliminate struggle, they outgrew it. And that's why they stand where others fall. They train themselves to suffer with purpose. They learn to walk through fire without slowing down. The problem with most people is that they don't know how to suffer properly. They encounter a little difficulty and think life is unfair. They experience a bit of discomfort and they look for an escape. They feel a moment of pressure and they run to distraction. They don't understand that pain isn't a signal to stop, it's a signal to keep going. Hardship isn't a sign you're failing, it's a sign you're on the right path. If life is challenging you, it means you're pushing into new territory. It means you're growing. It means you're being shaped into someone stronger than who you were yesterday. Pain is information. It tells you that you're breaking out of an old version of yourself. It tells you that you're leaving behind the habits, excuses, and weaknesses that kept you stuck. Pain is the evidence of transformation. And the sooner you accept that struggle is part of the process, the sooner you stop resisting it and start using it. When you stop asking, "Why is this happening to me?" and start saying, "Good, this is making me stronger," everything changes. Your identity shifts. Your resilience builds. Your confidence rises. You begin to realize that hardship isn't the enemy. It's the trainer preparing you for the life you say you want. That's why Andrew Tate says pain is the admission fee for greatness. You can't bypass it. You can't cheat it. You can't outsmart it. You walk through it. You grow from it. And every moment of discomfort becomes a brick in the foundation of the person you're becoming. Hardship builds muscle where weakness used to live. Struggle builds character where fear used to thrive. And pain builds discipline where excuses used to rule. Because the path to strength has always been paved with difficulty. And the people who rise are simply the ones who refuse to run from the pain required to earn it. Identity is not something you're born with. Identity is something you build, brick by brick, decision by decision, day after day. And the truth most people never understand is that discipline is the tool that shapes who you become. Not your past, not your mistakes, not your circumstances. Discipline. Every time you choose discipline over comfort, you are quietly rewriting the story of who you are. Every time you ignore excuses and take action anyway, you are carving out a new version of yourself. A version that you respect. A version others admire. A version that cannot be shaken by feelings, obstacles, or pressure. Most people don't struggle because they lack potential. They struggle because their identity is built on weakness, hesitation, and inconsistency. They identify as the person who quits. They identify as the person who tries. They identify as someone who breaks promises to themselves over and over. And every broken promise becomes part of their identity. Every excuse strengthens the version of them that never rises. Every moment of laziness builds the habit of accepting less. They don't realize that they're programming themselves to stay average, but when you start living with discipline, everything changes. You begin with small actions, waking up when the alarm rings, doing the work even when you're tired, choosing the tough option instead of the easy one. At first, it feels uncomfortable. Your feelings rebel, your old habits fight back, that old identity tries to pull you down, but with every disciplined action, that old identity loses power. It becomes weaker, quieter, less persuasive. And a new identity begins to form, stronger, sharper, more focused. You start becoming someone who doesn't hesitate, someone who doesn't break their own word, someone who follows through. The people who change their lives don't wait for a perfect moment. They don't wait for motivation. They don't wait for circumstances to magically shift. They create their transformation through repeated disciplined choices that eventually become who they are. Discipline forces you to evolve. When you push through discomfort long enough, discomfort becomes normal. When you push through resistance long enough, resistance becomes irrelevant. When you push through fear long enough, fear becomes fuel. You are literally training your identity to match your ambition, and identity is everything. If you identify as someone weak, you will act weak. If you identify as someone inconsistent, you will behave inconsistently. But if you identify as someone disciplined, someone unstoppable, your actions will naturally match that identity. You won't ask yourself if you feel like working, you'll just work, because disciplined people work. You won't question whether you're capable, you'll act as if you are, because disciplined identities don't entertain doubt. You won't quit when things get hard. You'll lean into the struggle, because disciplined identities grow through pain, not away from it. Discipline also changes the way the world sees you. People trust disciplined individuals. They follow them. They respect them. They rely on them. When you become disciplined, you stop being invisible. You stop being another average person in the crowd. You start becoming someone whose presence carries weight. Not because of what you say, but because of how you live. Discipline gives you an aura and energy, a silent authority that comes from being someone who is in control of their own life. And that identity creates opportunities you didn't even know were possible. Your relationships change because disciplined people attract disciplined energy. Your environment changes because you no longer tolerate negativity, weakness, or excuses. Your goals change because you know you can reach higher. Your standards rise because you refuse to settle for less than excellence. Discipline doesn't just give you results. It gives you a new identity that makes results inevitable, and eventually, you reach a point where discipline isn't something you do. It becomes something you are. You no longer rely on temporary emotion because you live through permanent structure. You no longer bow to your feelings because your identity bows to your purpose. You no longer negotiate with your old self because you've outgrown that version entirely. You start recognizing that the life you want is not built by talent or luck, but by the identity you shape through disciplined action. That's the transformation most people never experience. They keep searching for motivation, inspiration, and excitement, while the real power lies in identity. When you build yourself into someone who does what needs to be done regardless of mood, regardless of difficulty, regardless of distraction, you become unstoppable. Because the strongest version of you is not the one that feels good. It's the one that is consistently disciplined. And once that becomes your identity, the world becomes a place you navigate with confidence, power, and absolute certainty in who you are becoming. 2026 isn't going to be won by the loudest, the most emotional, the most talented, or the ones who post inspirational quotes online. It's going to be won by the ones who can hold their line every single day. The ones who wake up and do what needs to be done, whether they're tired, stressed, bored, or uninspired. The ones who don't break rhythm. The ones who don't disappear when life hits them. The ones who understand that consistency is the most lethal weapon they can carry into a world full of people who constantly stop and start. Every year exposes the difference between people who want results and people who are built for results. And in 2026, that gap is going to be bigger than ever. Consistency is the multiplier of discipline. It doesn't matter how strong you are for one day if you're weak for the next 6. It doesn't matter how motivated you feel this week if you crash the moment your emotions dip. Most people live in cycles of short-lived intensity followed by long stretches of laziness. They sprint for a moment, burn out, then start all over again. They waste months on recovery from their own inconsistency. That's why 2026 will crush them, because the world is moving faster, distractions are multiplying, dopamine addictions are stronger, and people are becoming more fragile emotionally. The only people who will rise are the ones who can maintain structured momentum despite the chaos around them. Ruthless consistency means you don't miss. You don't take days off from your purpose. You don't negotiate with yourself. You don't abandon the mission because you aren't feeling it. You move like a machine when others move like waves. You hold your routine like your life depends on it. You build habits so deeply ingrained that they push you forward even on your worst days. People think greatness comes from massive breakthroughs, but it comes from small actions repeated relentlessly. That's why consistent people walk into 2026 with an advantage others can't catch, because their habits are already installed. Their discipline is already trained, and their momentum is already rolling. Think about the last few years. How many people did you see talking big every January and collapsing by February? How many people posted their goals online but didn't back them up with actions? How many people told themselves they'd change their lives this time, only to repeat the same cycle again? These people will fall even farther behind in 2026 because the world is rewarding consistency more aggressively now than ever before. Employers want consistent workers. Business opportunities go to consistent performers. Followers respect consistent leaders. And life itself opens doors for the one who shows up every day without being begged or pushed or motivated. And here's the truth you need to hear: 2026 will not be won by the comfortable. It will belong to those who built their habits in silence, who trained when no one watched, who kept improving when nobody cared, who treated every day like a chance to sharpen themselves. It will belong to the disciplined warriors who understand that the smallest daily effort compounds into the biggest yearly results. It will belong to the ones who refuse to let a single day slip away wasted. The ones who realize that each day is a vote for the person they want to become. Consistency is the ultimate form of self-respect. When you stay consistent, you're telling yourself that your goals matter. You're telling yourself that your future matters. You're telling yourself that you will not break your own promises anymore. When you live that way long enough, your confidence becomes unshakable because you know you can depend on yourself. And once you can depend on yourself, you become dangerous in the best way. You're no longer controlled by circumstances. You're not intimidated by obstacles. You're not swayed by moods. You're grounded, focused, and moving forward with unwavering force. And what most people won't understand is that consistency is not about being perfect. It's about never stopping. It's about refusing to fall back into the comfort that destroys momentum. It's about pushing even when the push is small. It's about showing up even when your feelings are loud. It's about proving to yourself every day that the mission continues. Because one consistent year can outperform 10 inconsistent ones. 1 year of discipline can rewrite your entire life. And 2026 has the potential to be that year for you. If you're willing to be ruthlessly consistent, this is the year that will divide the serious from the unserious, the disciplined from the emotional, the focus from the distracted. And the winners will not be the ones who shouted the loudest. They'll be the ones who endured silently. They'll be the ones who kept grinding long after others quit. They'll be the ones who didn't need motivation because consistency became their identity. And once consistency becomes who you are, success becomes unavoidable. When you finally reach this point, something in you starts to click. You begin to understand that life isn't waiting for you to get ready. Life isn't pausing until you feel motivated or inspired. Life is happening right now, in real time, and every second you hesitate, you're feeding the version of yourself that stays stuck. This is the moment where the line between who you are and who you want to become starts to thin, not because the world changes for you, but because you begin changing for yourself. This keynote isn't about hype. This isn't about loud music, big promises, or dramatic words. This is about the quiet decision inside you that says enough is enough. Today I choose discipline over every excuse that has ever held me back. Most people go through life waiting for the right conditions. They wait for confidence, they wait for support, they wait for clarity, they wait for a sign. But discipline isn't something you wait for. Discipline is something you create. It is something you impose on yourself, especially when your feelings scream for comfort. And right now, in this moment, you get to decide what matters more to you. The temporary relief of giving in or the permanent satisfaction of rising above yourself. Because that is what discipline truly is. It is self-dominance. It is the ability to look your desires, your impulses, your fears right in the eye and say, you don't control me anymore. As you listen to this, ask yourself who you have been negotiating with. Have you been bargaining with your laziness, promising you'll start tomorrow? Have you been making deals with your fear, telling yourself you'll try once things calm down? Have you been giving your weakness a seat at the table of your decisions? Because the truth is harsh, but freeing. You cannot negotiate with the enemy within. You have to replace it. You have to overpower it. You have to build a version of you strong enough that the old version cannot return. And that transformation doesn't happen in a single dramatic moment. It happens in the boring repetition of choosing discipline every time your feelings try to redirect you. This keynote is the shift from wishing to becoming. People wish for success like it's something they might stumble upon, like it's hidden under a rock waiting to be discovered. Success isn't found. Success is built. Success is engineered through hours of effort no one applauds, through early mornings no one witnesses, through uncomfortable decisions no one understands. You become successful long before anyone calls you successful. And the bridge that carries you from wishing to becoming is discipline. Not talent, not luck, not hype. Discipline. And here's the part most people ignore. Discipline isn't about doing everything perfectly. Discipline is about not quitting when things aren't perfect. It's about moving forward even when progress is slow. It's about showing up even when yesterday was a disaster. It's about refusing to let your emotions rewrite your mission just because the path feels heavy. You're allowed to feel tired, but you're not allowed to stop. You're allowed to feel uncertain, but you're not allowed to turn back. You're allowed to feel fear, but you're not allowed to obey it. Discipline is doing what needs to be done, even on the days when everything inside you begs for comfort instead of growth. As this keynote unfolds, imagine the version of yourself capable of everything you say you want. Imagine the mindset, the habits, the discipline that version lives with daily. That version isn't waiting for motivation. That version isn't scrolling for inspiration. That version isn't looking at others and wishing. That version is acting, building, choosing, sacrificing, pushing, growing. That version is driven by a single truth. Discipline is the doorway to every dream you claim to have. And as long as you let your feelings dictate your life, that doorway remains locked. But the moment you choose discipline, the moment you take responsibility for every action you take from this day forward, that door begins to open. This is the final shift the speech prepares you for. The shift where you stop chasing temporary feelings and start building permanent character. The shift where excuses lose their influence and commitment becomes your compass. The shift where you stop hoping you become great one day and start acting like someone who refuses to be anything less than great today. At the end of everything we've explored, everything you've felt, everything you've faced within yourself throughout this speech, it all comes down to a single truth. Your life will always follow the standard you set for yourself. Not the standard you talk about, not the standard you dream about, but the standard you act on. Discipline isn't a concept anymore. Discipline isn't an idea, a theory, or a motivational slogan. It is the dividing line between the person you were and the person you are determined to become. Every moment you choose discipline over feelings, you move one step away from the life you're trying to escape and one step closer to the life you've been chasing in your imagination. Think about everything you've wanted, everything you've cried for, everything you've convinced yourself you might achieve someday. All of it has been waiting for you. Not because you weren't worthy, not because you weren't capable, but because you weren't consistent. Life does not reward good intentions. Life rewards execution. It rewards the quiet hours of dedication when nobody is watching, the sacrifices that feel unfair, the discipline that feels heavier than your emotions. You don't rise because you feel ready. You rise because you choose to rise, even when everything inside you begs for the easier path. And now you stand at a crossroads where only one direction will change you. The path of discipline may feel demanding, unforgiving, and uncomfortable, but it is the only path that leads to evolution. The other path, the one ruled by feelings, leads you right back into the cycle you've been trying to escape. Your future isn't determined by fate. Your future is determined by the choices you repeat. Each day you either sharpen your edge or you dull it. Each day you either strengthen your character or surrender it. Each day you either build yourself or betray yourself. And that decision will never belong to your feelings. It will always belong to your discipline. Everything you desire is on the other side of the moments you don't feel like working. Everything you dream of is hidden inside the tasks you avoid. Everything you want to become is shaped through the battles no one sees. Discipline has always been the truth you've avoided because it demands more from you than your emotions are willing to give. But you are not here to live a life controlled by hesitation, weakness, or fear. You are here to break the patterns that have kept you small. You are here to rise above who you were yesterday. You are here to become the version of yourself you've always imagined but never committed to fully. As this speech ends, your real work begins. The world won't hand you greatness. The world won't bend to your feelings. The world won't slow down for your insecurities, but it will surrender to your discipline. It will make room for you when you move with purpose. It will shift when you show up with consistency. It will reward you when you refuse to be the person who quits, hesitates, or waits for a better mood. You do not need permission. You do not need motivation. You do not need the perfect moment. You need the will to act, the strength to continue, and the discipline to follow through. Everything else will fall into place the moment you choose to become the person who refuses to live life at the mercy of their feelings,